Hey guys, welcome to my workbench. Today I want to just go over in a short video the process of thinking about taking a Matchbox car to a resin for a slot car. Okay, so I'm going to go through a current project of mine, which is this Series 3 Land Rover pickup. Alright, so this is a Series 3 late 60s to mid 80s pickup, cool 109-inch wheelbase. Now I saw this, and I'm a big Land Rover fan. I picked a couple up, and I didn't realize that it really is kind of perfect for our good friend the Slot Car. I have a couple of these Dash T-Jet style chassis, and the main thing that I realized was that the track width here was almost perfect. Okay, with the with the width of the wheels. Okay, and that's really the most important thing in my mind. The wheelbase I can shorten, and I'll show you how I did that, but the track width was important. Now Matchbox made another Rover, a Defender, which I have over here, and this is a cool model. This is a little more recent, the Defender, but the problem with this one, and this is a resin cast that I made, and it came out nice, but the problem was that the Defender was a lot wider, and the wheels, the axle stuck out, and it didn't run too great. The scale was a little off. Okay, that being said, this Series 3 pickup is just perfect. So first thing I had to do was take it apart. Okay, you got to drill out your rivets and see what you got inside. Okay, this is made of a couple pieces. We have the metal shell, we have the plastic base, which includes the rear and front bumpers. The front bumper has a cool winch on it. This winch, grill is part of the interior, which is part of this rear. So the interior is actually really nice, but I took it apart. I used part of the wheel wells, and I used the grill on mine. The main bottom part, I used the front and rear bumpers. Okay, the glass you could save, because you might want to try to mold the glass eventually if you're feeling up to the challenge getting that clear resin. The glass is nice. So this model had a lot of different parts. The main thing you know is you check the fit. Okay, so I knew the width was going to be good, but the width is almost perfect. The wheelbase was a little off. So I said, all right, well, this is a 109. They also made an 88-inch version, and I did a little math, a little ratio, and this turns out to be, in full scale, this would be a 94-inch wheelbase. All right, now if I use the truck hole, which is that top one, it gives me the ability to run taller tires, which is a little more Rover, and it also shortens that wheelbase down closer to 88. So just looking at some details, I was able to determine that this was going to be good to go. Plus I love the style, and I would have made it work no matter what, but this is a good starting point. So look at your car, find one you like, and figure out what you're going to have to do to it, okay, to get it to fit. Okay, now I got to cut this up. I got to drill the rivets out. I got to cut the metal and rejoin it. I got to strip the paint. So it's a lot of work. So you're better off thinking ahead if it's going to work for you ahead of time, because if you come in and you spend hours and hours of work and it's not going to work, that's a letdown. All right, so we got this. We're ready to go. I've cut it apart. I got my parts. I want to show you some tools and things that you should have or that you might want to use. Okay, nice small ruler. Got to measure things. Take that a step further. Get a caliper. Okay, so you can really check if things are lining up correctly. All right, and this will help you make things as nice as possible. Everyone's got one, number 11, good old X-Acto, of course. Super glue is handy. 5-minute epoxy, okay, super handy. Allows you to build and create and then keep working that day. Okay, the 5-minute aspect. Another adhesive that's really handy, and I'll show you where I used it in a couple spots, is this marine putty, epoxy putty stick. So you slice off a chunk and you mix the green and the white, and then it hardens up overnight. So this is another great product to build up layers. Okay, and this is thick, so you stick a part into it and it doesn't move. Whereas the liquid epoxy, you got to wait overnight. So this stuff's really great. Okay, so those are the liquids. I have a spray here of a spray of alcohol, clean your hands, and to help move marker spots out of the way. All right, so a set of mini files, gotta have them. Okay, smaller the better. These are pretty cheap. I go to the flat one most often. Okay, we got all different shapes in here. This is super handy. Who makes this one? FlexiFile. FlexiFile. So this is like a glorified nail file. It's really fine. It's got a little point on it. This is a great grit. This is what I'm using. So something like this is good for getting in on those surfaces. All right, another awesome tool, a Dremel, or in my case a flex shaft. Okay, and this baby spins here and allows you to carve things away and do the modeling. So this bit is a little diamond burr. It's diamond coated tip, super useful. They last a long time. All right, you get a set of those pretty cheap. The 3M bristle discs, flexible, they conform, and these can fit in here too. And these are available in all different grits. This is 220. It's pretty abrasive, pretty rough. I'd get some 400s as well. Real shaping and grinding. We got some 1/4-inch sanding drums, 1/2-inch sanding drums. Also handy, of course, is good old cutoff disc. Okay, these are the Dremel 409 discs. I run them double stacked because they're so thin and flimsy, but these are super useful. You can use the edge, you can use the surface for cutting. Okay, and finally a wire brush or two just to help remove some excess stuff. Really, those are the main ones I use, and I think that's all you need to do this kind of work. These are really handy, these metal diamond coated tips. Alright, so that's the equipment and the tools. Let me show you my model that I got going right now. Here it is, shortened up, sitting on another dash chassis here with the big tires. I found these on eBay, these old truck tires. They're awesome, silicone. They fit on these dash wheels perfect, and they're almost a perfect match for the Matchbox tires. So I'm going with these. Let's look at some details here, okay? I fit the rear bumper on. I had cut it off, the plastic. I used that epoxy putty, and I rolled a little string and stuck it in there and then squeezed on the bumper. And then I was able to get in there with the back of my X-Acto here and scrape away the excess squeeze out. And that left no gap, no seam, okay? You don't want any seams because seams are going to be hollows. So I did that to attach this. I also used that putty to attach the grill. Right up here, I put little strings of that putty, okay? And when I squeezed the grill on, the putty squeezed out, and I was able to slide my knife and make a beautiful sealed seam. Okay, so really nice. I used that putty as well to attach this bumper, the front bumper, and to build up a body mount, and also to provide some more structure to the front here, because you can see the grill is sunken in there. So I built it up a little bit. I used that white epoxy putty to build up the rear body mount as well. A nice pad here, giving you guys the option to drill it where you need. Other pieces I kept were the wheel wells. I cut those out. Here's the stock one just for reference. Right, so I cut those pieces out and I shaped them a bit so that way when this thing gets mounted on here, it's going to fit perfect. And the wheels are covered and you can see the gear train in there. It's just so cool. I built this rear bulkhead here out of an old credit card pieces. I epoxied that in, and I'm filing and sanding to get that window proportional correct. I got to bring this down a little bit more, so that fits nice, and it fits with a little bit of clearance to the clamp there. Okay, So that's coming out really nice. Now the hardest part about this phase is getting the wheelbase right. As you can see, I took this down a lot wheelbase wise, and the two seams I cut right here, right behind the cab, and I cut back here as well. So this cut was through all that metal, and this cut was through here. Now I keep filling the seam. I used epoxy. I got it as perfect as I could. 5-minute epoxy is great. You can basically sit there and hold it for 10 minutes while it cures. And then what I do is I take my primer and I spray a couple mist coats, and then I sand, and then I take a brush and dab the primer and build that up and sand and build it and sand with some 800 grit to get it perfectly flat. And those will be gone when we cast this thing. Same thing with the back one here. It's going to be perfectly flush. Pretty much is now. A tricky part is not losing too much detail on these bodies. So that's where these sanding pads come in handy, because they can kind of fit in between these certain areas and not, for example, ruin the mirror or the hinge. So these little details, okay? For your workbench, 220, having some 220 around, good. 400 is kind of my start point, because it's at this scale it's fairly coarse, and then 800 you can use with a little more wild action without worry of messing things up. Okay, but you got to be careful with the 400 and the 220, because those scratches can take a while to get out. Now you'll see these castings, when you strip the paint, use some heavy-duty paint stripper. These Matchbox castings are pretty porous. All these little details here were holes in the metal, and it's crazy how porous it is. So you're going to get when you get it together, get a couple coats of primer light, and then just sand it light in the sink, wet dry paper, and those will fill right in, and this thing will be mirror smooth when I'm done. Okay, as you build up your seams and you're sanding it and getting it perfect, go slow. With the wet dry paper in the sink, start with 800, move up to 1500, 2000, and even when you think it's perfect, try to really get up in the light and look for those reflections and look to see that as perfect. It's beyond where you can feel it, but you have to see it. All right. Now once the body's together and you drop it 3 times and it falls apart 3 times, like happened to me on this one, you get it to the point where you want to start to fit it onto your chassis and see how you want it to its stance. Okay, so I knew that these tires and wheels were going to be perfect. Doing a little research, the wheelbase is going to be good, and so it's time to build up those body posts. And like I said, I used this epoxy putty to build up a lump, and then I start filing it down till it's perfect. Okay, and you got to leave yourself a little bit of wiggle so the end user can fit these to their perfect, stance. Okay, let's see. I'm going to grab this little box and we can get a better look of how it kind of sits. All right, so it sits pretty nice. Got a little up in the back. The wheels have clearance. I think it just looks perfect. Now this body also looks really cool to me. I'm a full-on Rover nut. I think this body looks really cool with the low profile tires as well. Okay, these white wheels, these white dash wheels, and the low pro tires look really cool. So, obviously these body mounts were made for the taller tires. So the end user could get their body and file this down 1/8 of an inch or so in the front and a bit in the back, and they could make it fit nice and low and be a little more sleek on the with the low pro tires. Okay, and that'll handle a lot better on a track. So these would be fun to build up in that way as well. But when you're working on this, have a main goal in mind. So my main goal was truck tires to make it look more kind of authentic. Okay, so I found the eBay seller sold me these ribbed tall truck tires. They fit perfect on these white dash rims. Drop a super glue, hold them on, and gives me that stance I was looking for. Okay, so what do I got to do next? My next step is to A little more sanding. I've been dabbing my primer on. I use this Tamiya fine surface primer. This stuff's awesome. Super hot. It dries quick. It's kind of real toxic, which means it's great, and use it outside. And if I need to do tiny little touch-ups, I just spray a little spot on a piece of paper, and then I'll take a brush and I'll dab it in like I've been doing here, dabbing that on there. Okay, so this stuff is awesome. They sell this in a jar too for a brush. So. All right, so I'm going to keep sanding and getting this ready to mold. I'm going to join you guys next video when this is mounted and ready to mold, and I'll talk to you a little bit more about that process when that video appears on the scene. Okay, so stay safe out there in our new world we're in. Forget Netflix, get on your workbench, build something awesome, and we'll see you on the track.